Hey everyone, and welcome. So, if you're a language teacher, you know the feeling, right? Student mistakes can be, well, they can be frustrating, a little confusing, and sometimes just plain baffling. But what if I told you we've been looking at them all wrong? In this explainer, we're going to completely flip the script on learner errors, turning them from things you have to fix into powerful, exciting signs of progress.
All right, let's jump right in with a total classic. Your student says, "I catch the train." Now, come on, if you just spent an hour on irregular verbs, your first reaction is probably an internal sigh. I get it. But hold on. What if that sentence isn't a failure at all? What if it's actually a fascinating little puzzle, a clue that lets us peek inside the learning brain?
And this really is the big question, isn't it? Is a mistake like catched a sign that something's broken, a bad habit that we need to stamp out immediately? Or could it be something else? Something maybe even positive. A genuine sign that real, deep learning is actually happening right in front of us.
Okay, to solve this puzzle, here's our game plan. First, we're going to shift our whole perspective on mistakes. Then we'll learn how to tell different kinds of mistakes apart, because they're not all the same. We'll uncover what these mistakes really tell us, learn how to decode them like a detective, and finally, see how this completely changes our role in the classroom.
So, first things first, let's talk about our mindset. You know, that feeling you get when you hear an error, whether it's a flash of irritation or a feeling of encouragement, it's all tied to what we believe about how people learn a language. It is absolutely time to move from frustration to fascination.
You know, there are really two ways of looking at this. The old school view, view 1, sees an error as a failure. It's a bad habit that needs to be fixed pronto. It kind of suggests something went wrong in the teaching. But view 2, and this is where we're headed, sees errors as a totally natural, even positive part of the journey. It sees catched not as a failure, but as solid proof that a student is actively trying to figure out a rule they've learned. It's an opportunity.
All right, so to really make that shift from frustration to fascination, we've got to get a little more specific. Because, and this is so important, not all mistakes are created equal. The very first step is learning to spot what kind of mistake you're actually looking at.
So let's break them down into three main buckets. First up, you've got slips. This is when a student says, "I go yesterday," but they totally know the past tense of go. You give them a little nudge and they fix it themselves. It's just a brain fart, basically. Then you have attempts. This is a beginner trying to say something super complex when they just don't have the grammar for it yet. And then our most important one, errors. This is our "I catch the train" example. The learner is using a rule they've figured out, but their system, it's just not complete yet.
And here's the absolute key difference for us teachers. A slip? Honestly, you can often just ignore it. The student already knows the right answer. But an error? Oh, an error is pure gold. Why? Because the student can't fix it on their own. The mistake is coming directly from their current understanding of how English works. And that is our window of opportunity. That's where the real teaching can begin.
And this gets us to the real power of these true errors. They aren't just random. Nope. They are the logical result of a brain that is hard at work. And they give us this incredible, direct window into how a student is thinking about the language.
What it really all boils down to is this. Language learners, just like little kids learning to talk, are basically scientists. They're constantly forming and testing hypotheses. They get some input, they create a little mental rule to explain it, and then they test that rule out by speaking. "I catched" is just a hypothesis being tested in real time.
The linguist S.P. Corder had this perfect example. So a kid is asked a question, and he says, "Yes, I showed him." Now, what is happening in that little brain? Well, it's testing a hypothesis. Hypothesis number 1, maybe you make the past tense of show by saying shows. Makes sense, right?
Then the mother, she's confused. She says, "You what?" And that feedback is absolutely crucial. It's a signal. It tells the child, nope, hypothesis number 1 was a bust, time for a system update. So the brain goes right back to the drawing board.
So, the child tries again with a new hypothesis. Maybe they get a little mixed up and think of the verb see instead of show, and they apply a different rule they've heard, saying, "I seed him." Now, it's still wrong, of course, but it's not random. It's another logical attempt to figure out the system with the information he has.
And this brings us right back to our student in the classroom. The person who says, "I catch the train," is running the exact same mental program. Their hypothesis is simple. It's logical. To make a verb past tense, you add ed. Hey, it works for walked and talked, so why wouldn't it work for catch? This isn't a failure, people. This is a sign of a brain that is actively learning.
There's a really cool concept for this whole process, and it's called interlanguage. The best way to think about it is as the learner's own personal, evolving dialect of English. It's not just a random pile of mistakes, it's a real linguistic system with its own rules and its own internal logic. It's like their personal operating system for English. So catched isn't a failure to learn English, it's a perfectly logical feature of that student's current inner language.
Okay, so if errors are clues, how do we become language detectives? Well, this section is all about giving you a practical toolkit. We're going to learn how to categorize an error and then trace it all the way back to its source.
This table is basically your cheat sheet. First, we just classify the error. Is it lexical? A vocab problem, like saying I did a mistake instead of made. Is it syntactical? A grammar issue, like messing up the word order. Or maybe phonological, a pronunciation thing. Or, and this one's tricky, is it pragmatic? Using the right words but in the wrong situation, like being too direct with a waiter. Just being able to name the type of error is a huge first step.
So once we've named the error, we go hunting for the source. Where did it come from? Was it L1 interference, where a rule from their native language is tripping them up? Was it overgeneralization, like our catched example, where they just applied a rule everywhere? Could it just be simple ignorance? They literally just haven't learned it yet. Or, and we got to be honest with ourselves here, was it maybe teacher-induced? Did we explain something in a confusing way? Finding the source is everything. It's the key to knowing how to help.
Okay, so when you put all of this together, it fundamentally changes our job description. Seriously, we stop being just a corrector of mistakes and we become something so much more powerful, an informed guide on this incredible learning journey.
Understanding a student's interlanguage by looking at their errors, it's like having a superpower. It tells you exactly what they're ready to learn next. It helps you decide which mistakes are actually worth correcting right now and which ones you can let slide. And it lets you set the absolute perfect level of challenge to push them forward without completely overwhelming them.
This right here is the big transformation. The old view sees the teacher as a corrector. Your job is to find and stamp out every single mistake. The focus is negative, on what's wrong. But the new view, it sees the teacher as a guide. Your job is to understand the source of the error because you know it's part of a positive, natural process of development. We're not just fixing broken sentences anymore, we're helping a mind grow. And that really leaves us with one final thought to take away. The next time your student makes a mistake, and they will because that's what learning is, how are you going to see it? As a failure that needs to be corrected, or as a fascinating clue, a little window into their learning brain, and an opportunity for you to guide them to their next big milestone?